Good evening, everybody. Murph, alcoholic, and I wonder why you didn't say the best speaker in all the land. You know, I mean, I'm hurt right now. I'll get over it though. I'm going to ruffle some feathers tonight. I believe in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that we are here in Alcoholics Anonymous to get a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps that come out of the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it says, you know, this simple program. And it is a simple program for difficult people. See, the program laid out is perfect. The book has never been changed. Right? It's perfect the way it is. We don't need people trying to go in and change, you know, or people that are offended by something, go change the wording or whatever. It's the way it is because it works if you do it. See, I didn't do it for years. I worked Murph's Anonymous. I talked about that before. Picking and choosing the parts that I wanted to do. You know, I'm not going to get rid of this resentment. I'm never going to get rid of this resentment. Oh, God, I'm never going to do the God thing. This is a God program. You know, he's mentioned 134 times in the first 164 pages of our book. That in itself states that this is a God program. I've got to get over that word, right? So here comes the ruffling. It doesn't say anywhere that we have a spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 and 12. For the new person going through the steps, the 12 and 12 is just too much information. It gets too much going on in the alcoholic's head. And so that's why, you know, me personally, when I take people through the steps, I take them through the Big Book, period. And then after the Big Book, and after they've had the spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, then the 12 and 12 is beautiful literature to go through. It's beautiful, beautifully written, and there's some gems in there. And so that's me. And so I'm going to take you to my reading, which is, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. Okay, so basically it's saying, if we've done the first 5 steps, right, the correct way, there's no questions, I haven't left anything out, I'm beginning a relationship with God, I've completely surrendered, I'm now at step 6. And I just lost my page. Oh, there we go. Okay, so step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Doesn't say Murph is going to work on his character defects. Right? It doesn't say Murph is going to remove these character defects. Because Murph doesn't know what they are at this point. And Murph doesn't know which one of these can be useful to me. It's like the newcomer woman that comes into the rooms, and she's vulnerable, and she's in a state where, you know, who knows what's happened in her life that brought her here. And so she's judging people in the rooms. She's especially judging the men. Is he okay? Is this guy safe? Now, what if she thinks that judging is a bad thing, so she works on the judging part, and she stops judging everyone, and then she meets up with that one guy, right, that takes advantage of her. She took away her safety net. God left her with this judging to keep her safe. So that's a good example of why I don't choose what I believe needs to be taken away, because I don't know if it's useful right now. Right? And so I always talk about my education, how I wanted to go to school so bad, and I'd been procrastinating on it for years, right? And then finally, my sponsor said, "What are you afraid of?" And I went through all my fears. What I was afraid of, I was afraid I couldn't afford school. I didn't even know what school cost. I had never looked up the price of school, but I knew I couldn't afford it, right? A lie I'm telling myself. I wouldn't do well in school. That was another thing I was afraid of. I wouldn't be able to make the grades. And I had never entered a class. I had never done any college work whatsoever, but I convinced myself that I can't do it. Well, once I got through all those fears, what I was afraid of, and there was an emptiness in my head, I got this intuition to go call somebody who I knew had gone to school at a late age. I'd never even thought about calling him up to that point. And I called him, and I enrolled 2 days later. I had been working on and fussing over procrastination for all those years, and procrastination wasn't my problem. I had spent so much time in my head on that subject, but the problem was fear. I was afraid. And once I saw the lies that I was telling myself, and I wasn't afraid anymore, and I asked God to remove them, I went to school. Now, if you go back 5 years from that day I enrolled in school, where I was still working a job, my finances were okay. If I'd have gone to school then, when I actually did go to school, right? If I'd have gone to school then, I wouldn't have had the funding that was necessary for me to get by when I was completely broke. School paid. I got paid to go to school. I didn't even know I could get paid to go to school. And it got me through 2 years and allowed me to stay where I was. If I'd have worked on that before, this would have never happened. I'd have already been in school, and I'd have been sitting there, and what was I to do now? And so, I believe that God knew if this defect was removed earlier or taken away, it would have harmed me. But I don't know these things. So I'll never know that God is working in my life unless I get out of the way and let God work in my life. So when it comes to 6 and 7, the most important part of these steps outside of that foundation, right? Outside of the foundation, I have to fully surrender completely, right? No reservations, zero. If I have an inkling of a reservation, that can just blow up into the thing that gets me to drink later on, or that keeps me from having a relationship with God. And so I have to have that complete surrender, and then I ask God in, right? I ask God to restore me to sanity. Well, I hear so many definitions of the sanity that they're talking about. The sanity that they're talking about in the big book is outside things. I see now that outside things can't fix what's wrong with me internally. Okay? Alcohol is an outside thing. It's not going to fix what's wrong with me internally. What it did was it quieted my mind enough to where I could get through life until it didn't work anymore. Right? I can go through girlfriends, whatever, money, it doesn't matter. Anything outside of myself, it's insane to believe now that any of that is going to fix what's wrong with me. And once I am restored to that sanity where I understand that, then I turn my will and my life over to the care of this power that I'm starting to form a relationship with. My thinking and my actions. And then I get to the most important part outside of that foundation, and that's the fourth column of the fourth step, which are the exact nature of my wrongs. The exact nature of my wrongs are fear, dishonesty, self-seeking, and self-centeredness. And from those 4 things, I can carry myself through step 9. From those 4 things, I come to understand that all the things that are defects of character that I see as being defects of character come from one of those four things. And that's why after I've done 7, right, how can he take all of them, every one, I pray that you now remove every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out here to do your bidding. Amen. I can't do God's bidding if I'm working on myself. You know, Bill had such a huge ego, right? Bill's ego was massive. And yet Bill knew to keep this short. Bill knew that this step was none of my business, 7. It was God's business. That's what this step's about, right? It's about me trusting that God will take care of it. And as long as I get through as long as I keep those 4 things in that 4th column, the exact nature of my wrongs, as long as I keep them and look at them and watch them, my character defects start to disappear on their own. I no longer need to worry about my character because my character comes from taking care of those things. When I go to 8, that list is already made in step 4. You can have add-ons. There's always add-ons, right? And I'm making my amends. I start 10 and 11. The minute I start making those amends, I'm in 10 and 11, right? And so when I decide I'm going to do something, when I make a decision that I'm going to do something, I look at that, right? I look at every part of that because it doesn't mean that I don't play a part in my life. It means that I ask God into my life. I align myself. See, I don't pray to impose my will on God. I pray to surrender my will so that I can be with God. Right? What's this prayer? Hey, God, you know what? I need a car. I really would love a car. Right? You know, that slot machine, God, that cosmic slot machine where you put a prayer in, pull the handle, and hope that whatever it is that you're wishing for comes true. Well, maybe God doesn't think you need a car right now. Right? I don't know these things. And I have to stop worrying about them. And it frees up so much space in your head to allow yourself to start enjoying life. Because I'm not constantly working on myself and things that I think I need to do. And I start to see things and I start to get free. Right? I start making those amends. Why? Because I know God is going to take care of every situation, and no matter how it works out, whether I believe it's good or bad, I believe it's the right decision. That's the trust and faith that I have to strive to work towards with the power. I have to believe with all my heart that this power is there to take care of me, and that I don't have to worry about the result of whatever it is I'm doing. And it's hard, and it takes practice. I've got to practice over and over, screwing up and trying to shimmy my way into the result of this thing, and I try to manipulate it to work out the way I believe it should work out. But I've got to understand that the way I think it should work out might be wrong. Give it to God. You'll find out later on down the line why this result happened. And the results that I thought were a bad result turn out to be the best result that could have ever happened to me. But if I get in the way, I lessen the chance of me ever realizing or finding out why God chose to do it this way. I've got to get out of the way. It's why I need God. Right? My life was just a quagmire. I love that word, quagmire. My life was just a quagmire of things going wrong because of self-centered fear and self. This is such a beautiful program. It's So beautiful. So prime time, gives you the importance of this foundation, right? Prime time builds the foundation for me to be able to walk through these steps to get to 6 and 7 and get to a place where I finally say, you know what? Everything I've done so far, all the different ways that I've done the steps, I got to trust God on this. Let me see what happens. Let me trust God with this result. Let me see how it works out. And then I bank it when it comes back and I go, wow, I didn't spend hours in my head worrying about this thing, worrying about how it was going to turn out or what was going to happen. And that frees up hours to start enjoying my life. I love golf, and it's one of my passions. And this step has freed me up to be able to go out there and play. I don't have a lot of money, right? But every month, my bills are paid, food's in my belly, I've gone golfing, I've done other things. I'm slowly starting to pick up oil pastels again and start drawing. But guess what? I can't do that. I won't do that if my head is full of me. I've got to free this up. I've got to get this brain rewired. Because as I finish my 9th step, as I'm done with the rest of the 9th step, and I've made my amends, and then I have this spiritual awakening as a complete shift in the way I think and the way I perceive things. I no longer think that I need to be in charge anymore. I no longer perceive my father to be a bad man, just a man who was in pain. I no longer perceive that I'll never get this, or I'll never get that, or I'll never do this, or I'll never do that. My perceptions completely change. I start to be a good brother. I started to be a good son. I started to be a good friend. And I'm going to end it here. There's so much information that you're given on 6 and 7, that keeps your brain cluttered with things that you think you need to be doing. Trust that God. Make forming that relationship the most important thing in your life. Build that God. Grow with that God. Trust that God. Whomever that God is to you. Trust it. And allow God to do the work that I failed to do for years and years and years. And you know what Murph says usually at the end of his shares? I love me. I love Murph. I love my life. I got the greatest life ever. The greatest life ever. Thank you.